Welcome to They Not Like Us, the podcast that explores life in any way the journey takes us. What's the niche? There is no niche. Well, I guess we are the niche. We are conversation chameleons who follow the conversation wherever it may take us. Catch us live on Facebook and Twitch, or listen to the show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Hello, welcome to the show. I'm your host, Aaron. Today I'm welcomed by Mike Lane Evans, or was it Evans Lane? Sorry.
Lane Evans, yeah.
Lane Evans, thought it was. My bad. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Mike?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Lane Evans because I got married last year. And we never thought we'd double barrel our names, but neither of us wanted to give them up. So that's why people forget how to say it, because it's a strange name. But I run a business called Forefront Coaching. We help businesses of any size to improve their communication. If I'm honest, it's not just businesses, it's individuals, anybody that wants to take their sort of communication standards or connection with other people and improve that level up. And it all kicked off for me because I was an actor. I was an actor since I was 8 years old. And basically along the way, I built up a lot of strategies around communication. But in 2017, I found myself going to loads of professional acting auditions and screwing them up. And they were quite big, high profile auditions. And I would go in kind of, right, I've done all the practice. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to do this. And I would go in and do this. And it wasn't just like in my actual performance. It was actually just me as a person. I was like, there's some barrier. There's something that's stopping me. And I built a load of communication techniques and tools throughout that time that then have built the foundation of Forefront Coaching. And so I started using those with other people, giving them these tips and tools. And the more I started to coach people, the less I was enjoying being an actor and the more I was enjoying the actual coaching. So then I went back to school, did my full International Coaching Federation training so that I could broaden all the different coaching offerings that we've got, and then kicked off Forefront at the beginning of last year.
Sounds good. Did the acting side of it, when you went through that activity, did you get any support at all for it, or was it just kind of left to it? You had to figure it out for yourself?
When I was struggling, or life as an actor?
Yeah, but life as an actor, really. So obviously, it's difficult to manage. I imagine there's a lot of rejection as well with the auditions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which is can affect your self-esteem and everything else. Like,
yeah.
How do you manage that? Especially if you said you start as a child actor, how do you manage that especially through your younger years?
You know what? It's not just the rejection. You're absolutely right about everything that you just said, and on top of that, it's the ghosting. For anyone who's ever been ghosted before, it feels so. You just feel like sick, like gross, just like just worthless. And like other industries that I know have started to do this now, particularly in the US, because we work with a lot of US clients. There's less because there's more churn of seeing people for interviews in different industries. But this is starting to happen. But in the acting industry, it's existed for decades, where most of the time you just don't even know. You just don't get told whether you if you haven't heard after a few weeks, assume you didn't get it. Every now and then someone gets a call 5-6 weeks after they've done an audition saying, "Oh yeah, can you come to the recall?" And you just go, "Oh right, okay, I'll stop my life." So in terms of support, no, I mean you're out on your own, running your own business, but no one's really taught you how to run a business. It really depends on what theatre school you went to, or kind of if you didn't go to theatre school, kind of like what sort of network you've got around you as to whether you've been taught how to build a business. But I would say more than 80% of actors just don't really know how to do that part of it. And yeah, you don't get that support. I think this is a complete guess, but like in my life, the number of people that I know that have gone to therapy or still go to therapy, I would say that if in the acting industry, that's a much higher percentage than maybe other industries, because I think at some point people go, this is really hard. I'm being rejected or ghosted all day long. Like I feel like shit, and I don't know, and I've got to do something, because like you said, your self-esteem just kind of gets knocked down and down.
Yeah, I can imagine that's difficult, especially when you're a performer and you need to bring that energy and that confidence every time that you go to like auditions and stuff. And I just
Yeah.
imagine it's just that downward slope that's really difficult to maintain.
Yeah, and then of course, it affects other areas of your life as well. If that confidence is knocked. But the other thing for me is as well, though, it's not just about confidence and self-esteem, but actually what happens a lot is because you you're chasing all the time. You don't often have the luxury to stop and go, do I actually want this thing that I'm chasing? So your agent calls you up and says, right, you got this audition for this TV show. And you don't really have the opportunity to go, actually, I hate that TV show. I really don't like what it's about or what it stands for. Or like, this character is just rubbish. It's not going to do my career very good and it's not paying very well. And actually, I could go and do my day job of whatever that is and be paid more. Because nearly most actors have got another gig on the go. That's how I started doing public speaking coaching, helping people do TED Talks, and it was using my skills and then grew from there. But yeah, it's it's that chasing that people get lost in. The way I've always described it is it's like a greyhound on a racetrack. The rabbit that they're chasing isn't real and they're never going to catch it. And I know a lot of actors that like they get that they're just constantly chasing, and if they do catch it, there's a lot of like apathy or kind of sadness when you're like, oh, all right, I can't enjoy it though really because like it's over in 3 months, and then I've got I need another job, and so that's quite hard as well. But then because people just need a job, it's like, well, do you have that chance to kind of figure out what you want to do and what really motivates you? It's not an industry that I particularly enjoyed being in. The jobs, yeah, I did lots of jobs that I loved, but the industry, not so much.
Yeah, I can imagine it's very, very difficult, to be honest.
Yeah.
Is that the negative stuff more what drove the change, or is it actually the positives of enjoying the coaching, or is it a bit of both?
So in 2020, when everyone went into lockdown, I was doing both. I was one of the lucky actors that there were some productions that were made like in people's homes and put on Zoom, and people paid for them or didn't pay for them or whatever, and there was some work out there, and I was lucky to have a couple of paid jobs like that and then also be coaching. And honestly, when I woke up in the morning on the acting days, I was like, and when I woke up in the morning on the coaching days, I was buzzing. And that was there'd been a lot of little steps from 2017 to 2020, but that was the end of it for me. I did a job, or 2 jobs once the lockdowns ended, but it was just it was over for me. Because I want to do something that I enjoy that makes a difference. I'm doing something like valuable. And for me, a lot of the acting stuff I was doing, I was like, I'm not making any difference here, and I'm not enjoying it either. So what am I doing?
Yeah, it can be soul crushing when you feel like that. I've had jobs that really disliked, and you just feel like you're not achieving anything, and it just grinds you down, doesn't it?
Yeah, it
But
does.
yeah, so obviously you've transitioned to the coaching. How does that work? Do you do like full companies, or do you do just the leadership, just single individual people? How does it work?
Yes to all of those things.
Okay.
So a large part of our business is working with startups, so small businesses, where we're helping them to figure out their brand identity. And then that's sort of how we started out. But then obviously that can go both ways. So sometimes you get individuals who are struggling with their sort of personal brand identity, or they're kind of struggling to know, like, where do I want to go? Or I've got some ideas. I don't want to be in this job anymore. It's life coaching, it's business coaching. So there's lots of coaches at Forefront. And so we help people to go from wherever they are and communicate better from there. So that might be an individual who's really introverted, who can't even get to the point of applying for jobs, let alone the interview stage, because of the sort of the fear, the lack of confidence, the self-esteem issues. So that's kind of where we would work with individuals. And then we work with startups and we help them to figure out like, what the foundations of their business, what are their values, their mission, their story, and grow from there. And then beyond that, with medium-sized businesses and large sort of enterprises, they need communication support just as much, if not more. Because if you're an individual or a startup and you make a communication mess up, then the ripple effect is there, but it's not as big. If you're Coca-Cola and there's a huge communication issue within the office, the ripple effect across the whole company is much, much bigger. And so we provide support of those businesses for like managing difficult conversations, change management, C-suite leadership, like training and management. So we kind of cover that full swing, which from a marketing perspective, I'm told is not great that we support so many people at so many different levels. But what we've seen, and a psychologist said this to me recently, a psychologist I was talking with said, like, why communication and coaching? Like, coaching should just be fully open. Like, why is it specifically about communication? And I said, for me, like, I grew up knowing how to communicate. I've always been curious. I've always been a storyteller. I want to listen. I want to tell stories, and I want to connect with people. And I didn't realize that that's not common. And what the psychologist pointed out to me is that not only is it not common, but people don't get taught it. It's not one of the classes at school. It's not a degree that you can go and do. And even when you go into the workplace, you don't really go on courses that often for it. And so we've built such a foundation of support that we're seeing help people like throughout their journey. Like I say, whether it's for the individual self or when they're running some huge big business, that's really important to us that we stay offering that to everybody.
Yeah, I like that. And it's so true. You know, storytelling is massive and people buy into it. And the people who can explain things with a story or in the best way that brings you along with it, they're so much more impactful than just spewing out some facts and figures and just saying this is it. You see it everyday life. You see it all over the internet. The people who are big on the internet are the ones who are the best communicators, the ones who can tell the best stories and get people to believe in their ideas. Essentially,
and that's why we love coaching so much as well, because it's a more opportunity to keep connecting with those people. One of our clients who's in HR, they've got this amazing HR tech product. And she told me a fact that because of all the research they've done, she said when people go on a training course, within 7 days, they forget 92%. Like, this has been scientifically studied, right? If you're forgetting 92%, why are we still doing training days in the same way? And what we see at Forefront is, because we work globally, right? We work across 6 continents. The UK is really stuck in wanting these traditional day-long training courses. A lot of people have gone, well, 3 days is too much now, but a day, that's the thing. But we haven't got budget for any sort of follow-on coaching. Whereas lots of other countries around the world really promote that coaching because it gives the individuals in your team like more autonomy, more control, more connection, more follow-on. And so it's sticky, like stuff stays with them because they sort of learned. It's like now, right? Like people watch podcasts because they get a lot out of a conversation rather than just like, if I just spoke for an hour, sure, they'd get some things. But the fact that we're talking back and forward, it's more human. It makes more sense.
Yeah, I agree. I've done way too many of those one-day training courses that you're talking about, and you just switch off. You just want to get through it and survive.
Yeah, I'll be honest. In the UK, we do them. We do them, but we do them with a package of coaching that follows on from it. So you don't have that gap of 7 days. You kind of get teed up, but then you get to keep practicing that stuff, so it sticks. Did you? I mean, in all those training days that you did you get communication training?
I'm sure some of it was probably boxed as communication training, but no, not really, because ultimately I don't know if it's the same for probably the same for a large portion of people, but I learn from doing and then getting feedback and then doing again, getting feedback. I don't learn by being told this is what you need to do, off you go. Because I'll forget the principles, and then I'll just be, even with good intentions, I go away, try to do it. I'll end up just going back to my status quo and being, who I am, fumbling about and mumbling my words. That's what I do.
But you're right. Like, and I think the pressures of like time, and budget. Right, we've got enough budget for one day, and we need to get 10 people through training. It's not going to be as good if each individual has 3 1-hour coaching sessions, and like you just said, they get to actually see the difference, like in what they're doing. That's how we try to evolve it with our training days, is that we do, like, everyone gets the opportunity to work on. So if it's public speaking, they get to work on public speaking. If it's managing difficult conversations, they get to do some role play on that, and they do that in front of other people, so that you get feedback from everybody, but also at some point you get to watch other people and go, that wasn't very good, I think I do that, or that was amazing, wow, and being inspired by other people to kind of evolve and improve your own practice, because otherwise people are just wasting their money. These companies are just ticking a box.
Yeah, and unfortunately that's what some of them want to do, which is unfortunate. True. But but hopefully this the culture's changing a little bit, and people do genuinely want to improve and bring people on, get to that point where everybody's communicating well. Doing a bit of research on you, I found that you did a bit of work with the British military. What was that like?
Yeah, so I didn't serve, for any of your listeners, I didn't serve in the military. I was a consultant working with the military, and I loved it, is the answer. I grew up in an army town, and when it was a small town, my primary school was next to the secondary school, which was next to the sixth form for the whole of the town. So my sort of life was in there. And then when you finished school or sixth form, to walk down into town, you're at the top of the hill, and you would walk down this road, and you would go past the Army Recruitment Centre. So I spent every day for a good 4 or 5 years of sort of my teenage years, I would walk past there, and I played rugby, and a lot of my were joining up to various forces, and I felt like conflicted. I was like, I'd known since I was 8 years old that I wanted to be an actor, and so I knew that's what I was doing, but I felt this kind of, growing up in that town, I was like, I should be joining up, I should be doing something. I kind of wanted to, but obviously I didn't. And so yeah, it was amazing for me to go in and like support a world that I'd always felt like I wanted to support, having grown up in that area. But of course, no way am I claiming that I've worked at the levels that any of the actual serving people are. But it was a great thing to kind of go in and provide coaching and training, and in the acting days, role play for management and leadership programs that they were going through. And, just to be able to go in and like break that status quo of their day-to-day lives, even if you give them that one nugget of something that changes the way that they manage or lead somebody in a year's time. For me, I was like, well, that's just a nice way to spend your day. It gives you some purpose, right? But what I liked about it the most is it's different. Like, it's a little sort of what do they call it, like microclimate, if you will, because a lot of those people spend a lot of their time in those environments, on those camps or on those bases, or with that same group of people in this sort of tight-knit way. And we see the same things at universities or in firehouses, like fire stations, where a group of people are sort of together for long periods of time, and it creates lots of behaviors and attitudes and ways of communicating that they're not bad, they're just different. And so that's an amazing thing, as somebody who's curious about communication, is figuring out like how to adapt. But to be honest, that work has carried on for us, because we talk about communication across culture throughout all of our work. And that culture might be Britain to Nigeria, or it might be someone going from banking to the military or vice versa. So yeah, like loved it.
Yeah, I did almost 10 years in the military in the RAF, so I was in hotels chilling out and, not doing any not doing any of the hard yards. But yeah, it's very true. You develop your own sort of language almost, where when you communicate with people, and everybody understands what you mean, and the civilian outside world probably wouldn't have a clue what we're talking about half the time. But yeah,
and I think that's sometimes I've met people that don't care about that. They don't care that the civilian world don't understand because they're spending 30 years there. But then at some point, I met so many people that are leaving at 55 and then they're trying to establish themselves in a world that doesn't actually work in the same way that, and people go in their formative years at sort of 16, 17, 18. So it really forms a lot of who you are. And then suddenly it's like someone's like shut a door and opened another one, and you're like, what? None of this makes sense. I've met so many armed forces members like retiring or moving on who've shared those experiences. People that I've worked with and people in my personal life that have shared that kind of experience. And some of the regiments do a good job at like passing, like moving you on. But I also think in the civilian world, like there's Did you have the JP Morgan thing when you left the RAF? Did you have that offer?
No, I didn't hear about that. No.
I don't know if it's an army thing. I think it's a military thing. JP Morgan have this program that is basically for armed forces members leaving to come and it's like I don't know if it's 6 months or 12 months, but it's like a training program, and then a bunch of them get a job at JP Morgan beyond that. But it's specifically set up for those leaving the armed forces. And the only people I've met who aren't from the armed forces who've gone to that are rugby players. And I've spoke to an ex-rugby player, literally retired in the last 12 months, was playing in the Premiership. He started on that program. I think he did 2 weeks and then was like, no, this is not for me at all. But there are some organizations out there saying there's a lot of amazing things that we can take from the skills and the leadership qualities that these individuals have if we can kind of support them in making that change. What did you do? Do you mind, can I ask, after the 10 years, how was that step for you?
It wasn't too bad. I'd be lying if I said it was extremely difficult. But I had, my daughter was born. So that's why I left, because I didn't want to be away all the time, and I didn't want to get sent away and be almost a part-time dad, if you will. So because I was so determined to leave, and I was happy for the reason I left, I think that made it easier, because I was actively trying to transition myself and just get out of that way of life, really.
Yeah.
It's still things I miss, and I wouldn't have left if I didn't have my daughter. I'd still be there now, probably. But I got a lot of time for it, and I think especially if you're a young person, I think it's a really, really good education on life. You get so many new experiences from it. You learn so much from it. And come out with loads of different qualifications and skills, because they do really look after you, and they do try to develop you as a person and enable you to then go on after your service. So they are really, really good at that. I think the difficulty becomes when you're sort of 20 years in, you planned a full career, you want to do a full career, and then when it comes to an end, is what do you do then? I think that's the people that struggle the most, to be honest.
Yeah, it's my. I hope he doesn't mind me saying this. My cousin is a professional footballer, and he's played through the leagues, and he's same age as me, so he's 38. So he's back in our hometown playing for semi-professional for the last 2 years of his career. This one being the last year. And I see that a lot with him in the community. It's you're not starting out when you're a kid, going right, I want to be a footballer until I'm 38, and then what I really want to do is, and if things are going well for you, as they did for my cousin, you're not stopping to be like, oh yeah, I need to start doing all my exams in accounting because I want to set up my own accounting business. 2 years before I finish. And some of the guys some of them are really clued up. And then obviously the really rich ones, the really wealthy ones have got hotel chains or whatever else. But I think that's another industry that's got that sort of same thing as the military. Like if you're like you just said, like if you're having a good time, if you're sort of like enveloped by the world in a good way, then why would you be looking for the exit plan? I don't think that's how most people live lives. Whereas startups, you meet a lot of startups and they're already talking about their exit, like how they want to sell it for so much, and they're just growing it to get. Well, a lot of tech startups anyway are looking to do that. And when I first started working with tech startups, I was like, this is the strangest thing to be talking about your out when you're still at the stage where you're like really passionate about just starting it. But yeah, like, I guess when you went into the RAF, you weren't thinking about the life after it.
No, not necessarily, but I'm one of those. I'm still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, so I'm still trying to work it out. But we'll get there eventually, I'm sure. But
It's nice, isn't it? It's nice that like we're not our grandparents. We don't have to like choose a job and stick with it for life.
Yeah, I don't think I could do it. I have a very short attention span, so I get itchy feet and want to try new things all the time. So that's part of my problem. But no, a lot of time for the military, and like I say, I probably would have stayed had my life circumstances been different. But
yeah,
again, I'm happy that I've had the experience. I've moved on. I've learned a lot from it, and I take that with me now to do other stuff. But no, you're definitely right. I mean, I've got a cousin who's a ex-professional rugby player, and he's been in the same boat. He was very successful, had a really good career, but then that's all he's ever wanted to do. So what do you do after that?
right, exactly.
That's the problem in it. So do you? And I'm touching on the startup thing. The amount of I was discussing it with another chap recently on the podcast. The amount of startups that fail is astronomical. So I think when you're going into a startup, I think you kind of almost have to have some sort of backup plan, some sort of out potentially. Do you agree with that, or do you think that's a bad strategy?
Oh, you know what? That's a really good question, Aaron. And I don't. The honest answer is I don't know, because when I was 15, 16, I had an amazing teacher at school who like helped me improve with my acting. But he always encouraged me. He was ex-military, he then played. I think he played for Army for the rugby, which had taken him into a bit of a semi-professional career. So a lot of these things that we're talking about. But because he'd had multiple roles, and then he was like the deputy head of the big high school, right? He really encouraged me to always have a backup plan to act in. Go do it. You're amazing. You'll do really well. Always figure out what your backup plan is. And then I got to sixth form, and my amazing teacher there was like, ditch your backup plan. If you've got a backup plan, you're not going to work hard enough. You're not going to get it done. And I'm so lucky that I got both of those lessons. The problem was I was really like encourageable. And so I just was like, okay, backup plan out the window. And I went in and it worked for a minute. But then, there were periods where acting was a bit slower in my sort of like early 20s. You come out of theatre school, things have gone really well. Then they sort of dipped off, and then you're like, oh, I really don't know what else to do, but I need to pay the rent. And so you have to start getting pretty like ingenuitive, I think that's the word. And so for startups, I think like I see huge value in those ones who are just not even just tenacious, but they're almost kind of dumb to the fact that it might not work. And I'll be honest, again, statistically, for me, based on my experience of working with over 1,000 startups, I'd say it's usually startup founders from the US who have a bit more of that kind of that belief that there's less of that sort of British doubt of, well, you probably can't do it. And so, yeah, they don't have that backup plan and they just go in. And I do think there's a lot to be had. Like I met somebody yesterday who's really like multi-millionaire. And he said to me, he was like, you don't need to go chasing money. You just need to do good things and money will come to you. And I was like, I love that. I love it. I don't know if I 100% agree with it, but I do notice the more I just with Forefront just do good work and focus on that, the more the good clients do come in. So I think for those startups, it kind of makes sense to not have a backup plan. I don't know if that's my opinion or not.
Yeah, I think maybe it's individual dependent, maybe. Because, like you say, the cultures of the UK and the US are very, very different.
Very different.
I mean, in the UK, where everything's doomed to fail all the time, and nobody wants you to succeed. That seems to be the approach. And in America, it's like, oh, everybody can do it. Anyone can do it. Oh, you're doing great. So it's very, very different.
Yeah.
But
it is. Like, I don't know. Like, did you like if you were like, what would you say startups should have that backup plan? What do you think?
for me, yes, but that's probably speaks to some of my own self-esteem and confidence, I suppose, as well, to a degree, where I'd go into it thinking, well, this is probably going to fail. That's just where my mindset is at. But I think if you've got that, I don't know, and I think just logically as well, statistically, the odds are against you. So looking at that, maybe. But maybe I'm just a pessimist. Maybe I just got that UK mentality. It's just ingrained in me now, and that's what I'm doing.
I mean, there's a lot of people wouldn't have been able to do what you've done of starting a podcast. You know, you're putting yourself out there. You're asking for likes and shares and follows and all those, good things like that. That's hard, I think, for a lot of people to put themselves out there. You might have a backup plan for it all. I also, to be honest, I think nowadays, can't remember the statistic, the percentage, but it was something. It was over 50% of Gen Z have a side hustle. I want to say it was something like 60 or 70%. But it was saying, like, it doesn't matter whether they're in a full-time job or whether they're running a startup. There's an overwhelming percentage that has a side hustle. And I think it's less about self-esteem and more about just work-life balance and how, like, we've all got a phone in our pocket, so we can kind of run a side hustle while we go to the bar and get our mates a drink. We can send so I think there's that culture of work has also changed how many kind of the old phrase of like irons in the fire we can have.
Yeah, I think technology's made things much more accessible, and I suppose, especially if you've got a lot of time and you need to pass the time and do something, you might as well do something that's going to turn a profit, I suppose, is probably how people see it. I don't do this for a profit, by the way. That's why it doesn't bother me. So I'm just doing it because I enjoy it. So and I wouldn't have been able to do this, but even 5 years ago, I don't think wouldn't have had the confidence to put myself out there and just do it. But I've just got to a point in my life where I just don't care what people think anymore. So I'm just me, unapologetically me, and I just shove it out there for the world to see. So,
was there a moment where you decided I'm starting a podcast, or was it a journey of things?
I've always had an interest in doing something like this, and I did start back in 2018. I did 2 very, very poorly put together and edited podcast shows, but I was just so concerned about what everybody else thought, and I stopped doing it, and then just kind of went by the wayside. And it's like I say, it's only now that I've got to the point where I'm comfortable enough in myself to just be me, not care what anybody else thinks, and just go and do my own thing. So that's kind of how I am where I am now, really. But it took me a long time to get there. A long time to get there. Yeah. So I need a lot of work on my communication stuff still, but we'll get there as well. Practice. Well,
it's one of our many things is helping people with their podcasts. So maybe we should carry on chatting about that after.
Yeah, maybe.
No, and I think this is. So I think one of the highest rated podcasts in the UK is the Diary of a CEO podcast. And Stephen Bartlett is brilliant. Like, he's always had a level of confidence and like inquisition, I would say, more than curiosity from the very, very beginning. But I don't know if he's paying people to help with his communication or if he's just figured it out. He's gone on this journey. For me anyway, if I listen to episode 1 versus this week's episode, I can really see the difference in like his confidence, in his questioning, in his listening skills, in the way that he interacts and connects with different guests. So I know it's not his podcast, but like that's one of the real famous ones that people will know about. And I guess what I'm saying is just you doing it is gonna like help you get more confident and improve.
Yeah, that's it. I just need to do it, and I need to just keep learning really and adapting, and it's just reps. So I'm just trying to do as many as I can, take the feedback, watch and see what I'm doing, and etc. And then just try and adapt and tweak things as I go. I'm like I said, I'm not trying to make it perfect overnight. I'm just trying to make minor adjustments, and just over time, hopefully, I'll get to where I want to be.
Yeah, nice.
But so you help a lot of podcast hosts.
Do we help a lot of them?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like it's one of the. If I'm really honest, we don't advertise it, we don't market it. It's not on our website, so it's not like it's a combination of the fact that we do a course in public speaking. It's a lot of that's needed for podcasting. We do a course in networking and actually building that clientele and making those connections with people and asking the right questions before you're getting on the microphone and everything. So it's a lot of a combination of other things that we already do. Also, I mentioned earlier, we do managing difficult conversations, of course, in that. And actually, at some point, not always, but at some point on podcasts, there's the opportunity to challenge, to push a guest to really challenge, do you believe that? Is that actually what or to ask them the difficult questions? So it really is sort of a combination of all of that. And then bringing into the fact that I've been in front of a camera and a microphone for most of my life, it's quite easy to bring all of those skills together. So yeah, it's not something that anyone could Google and go find it, but we've had quite a few people come to us and say, would you give me some help in this area? And we have done.
Nice. Do you have, working with all these different clients from different backgrounds, different areas, and different businesses, etc., do you have, or do you see a common theme where people struggle the most?
Gosh, that's a really good question. Yeah, I think I do. The reason I'm saying I think is because this is maybe my bias towards something that I think I see a problem happen a lot. So, but I think when we're in a job interview or on a podcast or we're delivering a speech, whether that's just to our colleagues or on a big speech, we are the ones who are doing all the talking. I find it really interesting that podcasts are set up, most of them around the world, to basically you just throw questions at me and me go on big stories, and we never really ask you many questions or have that kind of back and forward, which doesn't seem very human or real to me. But anyway, there's all these different places where it's just about one person talking. So what happens most of the time is that people think, I want this. We see it in emails a lot. People will say something like, oh, I'd love it if you could get back to me this week, or I'd love it if we could jump on a call to discuss this further. You're not motivating that person or inspiring that person or trying to find out whether they want to jump on a call next week or whether they've got time or whether they're interested. You're making it about yourself. And I think that happens a lot because we're trying to build a business or we're trying to get the thing that we want. We see it in relationships all the time where so my wife is a coach, not in communication specifically, but she's a coach. And so we know so many best practices that we don't follow at home. And you get those moments where you just, you're tired at the end of the day and you just need to get something sorted and you're not curious and you just sort of try to get what you want out of the situation. And it nearly always fails. Because it's those are the times where in relationships we end up in an argument because you're not actually it doesn't seem like you care what the other person wants. But I think all of that happens across our clients, whether it's startups working in podcasts, whether it's huge CEOs of massive companies. You're trying to get what you want first and not stopping or spending enough time thinking what did they want and what did they need. And so actually in all of our different courses and all of the work, that there is an exercise or a number of exercises that we do that focus just on that, focusing on your audience and meeting their needs, not just yours. So yeah, no one's asked me that question before. It's a really good question. I think that's the consistent thing I see.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, and it's so true. Especially if we're tired, after a long day, we will always revert back to, to the status quo essentially. How do you help people like coach that out of them? Because you'll never completely get rid of it, will you? But how do you manage to kind of limit the amount of regression that you get?
I think the more opportunity people get to practice and observe, so either in the role play stuff that I was talking about earlier, where you get to watch your colleagues, or so in our one-on-one sessions, a lot of our work is over Zoom or other platforms that are available. We record them, and we use a platform that records the video as well as the transcript, so that you can scroll through the video and it'll meet along with the transcript. And what we used to do is we just used to use Zoom recording, just hit the record button at the bottom, and we would highly encourage people to go and watch themselves. And honestly, I can't, maybe one or two people out of the first sort of 500 or so actually did. Whereas with the transcripts, there's always a moment in a session where some gold happens. Usually that's from the client. Sometimes it's from us. Usually it's from the client. And they want to go back and they want to find that moment of gold to like type it up into a script or to take it to their team or whatever it might be. So they scroll through the transcript. And as they're scrolling through the transcripts, they're hearing and seeing their own voice. And then there becomes a little bit of maybe morbid curiosity to go, oh God, I look awful. Oh, I was putting a really funny face there. But then you've done it. You've already watched 10 seconds or 20 seconds. And it's the best thing that anybody can do. Like it's like being able to see the ways that my sister is on her way here to stay with us this weekend. She's married, 3 young children. They're all coming. I love her dearly, but she is one of the people in my life that's always challenged me the most. And I had an ex-girlfriend years ago when I was at university, and my sister just basically pulled me up for the way she was like, you don't speak very nicely to her. And I can't remember the exact couple of times that this had happened. Things were quite stressful in our relationship, and particularly I wasn't very happy with my work life. I was feeling very unsatisfied, so I was just being a bit of an arsehole, really. I was just in general in life. But her sort of challenging me on that, you then end up in this sort of debate back and forward of what you did and what you didn't say. And actually just having my own words replayed to me was sort of the pre-Zoom thing of going, I don't remember saying that, but if I did, that's horrible. And that has always helped me a lot. But mainly when it comes to presenting, we encourage people to watch themselves. And one of the guys on our team at Forefront, I have known since I was 17. We auditioned for the same theatre school together that we then got into and became really close mates, lived together for 3 years. And we now work together at Forefront. So we've known each other a long time. We know each other's kind of bad and good sides. And when we talk about telling stories, we talk about how one of the most important things is structure. Because if we go back to what I was saying about, you've got to understand, you've got to think about the other person, not just about yourself. And he's got this real habit of starting stories in the middle and going, right, sorry, let me just explain, and going back to the beginning. And we were on a workshop teaching storytelling to some clients one day. I can't remember what day it was one day this week, and he did one of these sort of bad practice stories, but because he was self-aware, because we were in that environment of learning and displaying best practice to other people, he caught himself, stopped himself, sort of mocked himself, sort of owned it in the moment, and used it as an example for what not to do. And what he didn't try to style it out and say, oh, I did that deliberately. He owned that he'd done it accidentally. And that sort of self-awareness has grown because he's having to watch himself more and more and more with our coaching sessions. So watch yourself.
Yeah. It's a tough watching yourself back. I know it is. I've done it myself when you have to watch it and listen to yourself, but you do pick up a lot from it.
Yeah.
You really do. So obviously I've started a podcast, right? And part of this is, I thought, all right, I need to be really extroverted. I need like all this charisma. And you get some guests on, and they really, especially from the US, they're really, really powerful. They're really extroverted, really got lots of charisma, and they almost make me go into my shell a little bit. Is that something that you think that you need to present well, or to be a podcast host, or in these leadership roles when you present, you're pitching for investment or whatever you're doing?
No, I don't think it is. I think and we're really seeing it in social media a lot at the moment. Authenticity. I stumbled there because I was going to say being authentic. Authenticity is more desirable from audiences than good presentation skills. Couple of examples, like at the moment this is a very US reference. So at the moment it's the Democratic Party. What am I trying to say? Conference. Okay, and it's been going on for days in the US. Have you seen any of it?
No, I try to avoid it, to be honest, but I know what's going on.
The only reason I'm going to recommend any of it to your listeners is because they have filled it with stories. So like senior people who are supporting Kamala Harris, and there are just stories after stories after stories, and the quality of the actual storytelling. It doesn't matter whether you're right wing, left wing, American, British. Like it's regardless, it's the quality of the storytelling. But I've heard British podcasters dissecting what's amazing about it, and one of the podcasters that I've listened to talks about, it's so successful because they use their hand gestures in 20 different ways. I counted. They use their hand gestures in 20 different things throughout the time that they were speaking. And I actually found a video in some research I was doing yesterday, and someone in the US has done a study into successful TED Talks, and the top 20 most successful use their hand gestures in their 20-minute talk. I think it was more than 550 times, like throughout that 20 minutes. But for me, that in isolation is BS. Like it's not the hand gestures that are keeping people engaged. It's the intention behind the hand gestures. It's whether they're actually connected to what you're talking about, or if you're just sort of sitting there, standing there doing this with your hands. For those just listening, I was just moving my hands around. And so, I think we often watch extroverts and go, wow, God, wow, what energy. But then I want to survey one of those times in 7 days when you've forgotten 92%. What have you remembered about that person? And a lot of times it's that they were really energetic and really smiley, and they use their hand gestures loads. Cool. And what they stand for, their foundations, the things that are important to them, the things they wanted to teach to you, like what do you remember about? And so I think the extrovert it can be a really great tool. What we do though in our work is it doesn't matter whether you're introverted, extroverted, you're terrified of public speaking, or you're really well experienced with it. We work with where you're coming from, where you're starting at, and then we'll scale up from there. We had someone come to us beginning of this year. She's a professional public speaker. She gets paid $10,000 per 30-minute speech. You can easily say, well, why does she need our help? We scaled her up. She's even better now. And at the same time, we've got people who struggle to say hello to somebody at a networking event who are coming to us to make sure that they can say hello and they can tell those stories. So I think in the same way I said watch yourself, I also think watching others can be really helpful to kind of make a list of what is it about them that I really like and what I don't like. But then not just copying it, but making it your own. So an example I can give you, like Steve Jobs used to pace a lot on stage. He used to sort of walk back and forward. I call it like the tennis match. Basically got to one side and like walked to the other side and just kept moving. And because Apple was so successful and so many people like are part of the Apple cult of wanting the phones and the laptops and the iPads and the whole thing, people see Steve Jobs as a really successful speaker. Steve Jobs was a really successful speaker because before he walked on stage, people were already there excited for the next iPhone. And actually that that walking back and forward becomes really distracting. And it was more about Steve Jobs than it was about the audience. It was him comforting himself in being nervous on stage. So I need to just keep moving. I just got to keep moving. And also he used to look down a lot because he's finding his next words, his next thoughts as he's looking down sort of at his feet as he's walking. So he had levels of success. But if you took those two things and you went, right, okay, well, he's a great speaker, I'll copy those two things. You've chosen two bad habits. So watching other people and just picking out all the extroverted things and trying to copy them is not going to work. Equally, you can figure out like, what do I like and why am I liking that? Like, why is that something that's kind of like resonating with me? And so in the Democratic Convention right now, there are a lot of stories that are coming from this like real place of like truth and honesty. They've really decided to lean in on vulnerability. And yes, they've clearly been given loads of help and paid loads of money and got people that are amazing storytellers anyway. But if you just tell a story without the vulnerability, people won't connect with you in the same way.
Yeah, I agree with that, to be honest. And there's a lot of, like you say about the hand gestures stuff, there's a lot of cookie cutter advice out there about public speaking and about, being confident and all this stuff. And it's, just do these steps as if it's that easy. I don't know if this is a term that might have even stolen from you, but authentic confidence. Is that something that you use?
No, we don't use that.
Okay.
I'm just what that means.
Okay. I thought I might have stolen that from you during my research, but like authentic confidence. So just being confident. So to me, authentic confidence is me being confident in myself and my own ways. Obviously, right. I can make tweaks and adjust it to be better, but not try to be somebody else, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Not try and be this extroverted person, because I'm not really. I'm actually quite introverted, but I'm quite capable of being introverted, but also putting myself out there in a weird way. So it's kind of finding that authentic confidence, really. And I was just wondering what that meant to you, but obviously I've thrown you off a little bit with it.
No, not at all.
No.
I think it's really nice. I think I love the idea of it, because I think the word confidence, a lot of the time we misunderstand it to be, I got told I was really confident growing up all the time. My sisters, to bring them up again, would be like, oh, you're so confident and we're not. And what that meant was I talked a lot, I was loud, I was good at storytelling. That's what, especially in Britain, I think that's what we see confidence as. That's why a lot of Brits look at a lot of Americans and sort of see this sort of instilled confidence in them. But I've met some amazing public speakers and like connectors, people, conversationalists who are really, really introverted. So I don't think it has to get in the way. So yeah, I love the idea of like the authenticity and finding out like it's almost kind of like authentic comfortability. Like are you comfortable enough in yourself authentically to just be in a room or be on a podcast or be on stage? And I also think that like you're just who you are and the way you talk and the energy levels that you bring, like you've got listeners. You've got listeners because there are people that want this. They want your style. They want to just watch genuine, honest conversations, and they don't want to go and watch the really high level, kind of energized, pre-planned stuff. Maybe I'm guessing. Maybe some of your listeners like both of those things. But there's a place for it all. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a successful podcast.
Yeah, I guess especially on the internet now, you could with the amount of reach that you get, you can reach all types of people, I suppose. And there's something for everybody, and not everything's for everyone. So it's knowing and understanding that as well, I suppose.
Yeah, that's true.
So that when it comes to the public speaking, then how, if somebody felt completely out of their depth doing it, public speaking, or even coming on a show like this or anything like that, how would you help that person?
So I think coming and seeking coaching in the first place is actually a really big step, because like you said earlier, with those training days that you got sent on and you got made to go to, like you just sort of go back to you just sort of like fob it off and go back to your habits. So I think if you've actively chosen to take like some sort of like coaching or training journey yourself, I think actually that's a massive step for yourself. And so I'm going to step back for those people who haven't made that step or who are terrified to even make that step. And I would say if you feel like you can't, so I'm going to start with if you can't rather than if you don't want to, but if you feel like you can't do it, then spend some time on your own just asking, what is it that you feel like you can't do? So this is a piece of advice I've given on other podcasts. So if anyone's listened, I apologize for the repetition, but for me, it's really, really important. Take some time for yourself. Now, if you have time to go away for 2 days and figure this out, if it's just an hour's walk on a Sunday, if you're a parent of young children and it's just 15 minutes in the bathroom before they realize that you've disappeared, whatever that might be, take that time to actively go and figure out, like, ask yourself these questions. Because if you're stuck, you've got that big public speaking event coming up and you're terrified about it and you know you should do something, but now it's a week on and you still haven't done anything. It's 2 weeks on and you're aware you've not done it and you're aware you're avoiding it. Then take some time, no distractions, no phone, and just start asking yourself, look, why is it? What is it that you're avoiding? And so a lot of us don't give ourselves that luxury. And so that we end up just on this kind of treadmill. I just like, oh, it's Friday again and I haven't done it. Oh, it's Friday again and I still haven't done it. But then when you come to us, when you do get to that big step, there's nothing scary that will happen. Nobody at the beginning is going to be asked to stand up and deliver a presentation. If you come on one of our full training days, in a public speaking training day, the afternoon is usually delivering some form of speech. However, it's not school. It's not mandatory. If you paid to be on that course and you say, listen, respectfully, I just really love to learn from watching other people, there's nobody going to make you do that. What I will say is that all growth happens out of stretching yourself out of your comfort zone. And unfortunately, scientifically too, the next layer of the onion after stretching out of your comfort zone is fear. Before we can hit success, we've got to go through fear. And obviously I'm biased because I'm a coach. I think we're all much better off if we can experience fear, well, at least somebody can just hold our hand for a minute. Like if that's like, a boss at your workplace who's just able to go and fire things back and forward with, if it's a loved one in your personal life, if it's a coach, if it's a therapist, if it's whatever is your kind of thing. I think a lot of people sort of seek that out, and it's because at some point, if we want to grow, we want to evolve, then we've got to go through that fear. And so what we do is we are guides through that. We'll ask questions, we're going to challenge, we're going to ask you to do things that are not in your comfort zone. And most of the time, the reason for doing it is to get out of your comfort zone. I think this is the case that still 100% of people that have come to our training days where they've had to do that have left having felt like they've improved something. We do feedback and surveys afterwards. Some people might have felt like, wow, I've improved loads. And other people might be like, oh yeah, I've taken that little step, but there's an area of improvement because you've gone through that stretch. So the biggest thing that we do, this is the last thing I'll say, the biggest thing that we do at the very, very beginning of the day is we will show you our vulnerability. We'll be silly, we'll get stuff wrong, we'll tell you stories of where we've messed up and failed, not to trick you or to kind of trying to mark it or anything. It's because what we're doing is setting a space of psychological safety, because we can't ask you to screw up if we can't show it to you ourselves. And so we one of our brand sort of USPs we claim is that we will create a trusting environment in the quickest time possible. So whether that's individuals, small teams, larger teams, that's what we're aiming to do at the beginning, so that you go, this is literally my worst nightmare, but I feel safe enough to give it a go. And that's, if I'm honest, Aaron, I've not seen anyone say no, because people go, okay, well, it's better to make the mistake here, if it is a mistake at all, but it's better to make it here than when it's in sort of like real life situation.
Yeah, that's refreshing to hear, to be honest, because I think that applies to so many things, not just the coaching realm. So, for leaders and everything else, people need to show that vulnerability to open up that safety for people.
Yeah.
Even in any relationship, really, if you want to have that trust and that safe relationship where people can, develop and get better, then you need to have that space. It's so important.
Yeah. I think, like, COVID has helped that a little bit. Like, I hope you don't mind me pointing this out, but like, there's been a couple of times in the last sort of 5-10 minutes where I heard your children in the background, and I don't know if
it will be.
I don't know if they'll be edited out or whatever. But actually, I think it's amazing because since COVID, when the world went online, there's when I first started coming from like the acting world, I used to teach people about like the perfect setup. And it's the right wall and the right lighting and the right microphone and right camera, yeah. But it was also about the right clothes, and it was also like, when I'll tell you the story. When in 2020, my wife and I were saving to buy our first house together, and another couple who we're really great friends with were also saving to buy their house. So we decided, right, well, this was 2019, before we knew COVID was a thing. We were like, well, let's spend 2 years and live together. Like, we've sort of done it with like boyfriends and girlfriends coming and staying over. Like, let's just commit to it. 2-bedroom flat. Moved in November. By the March, we were locked in with each other for months. And we went. What we used to do is every Sunday, we'd sit around the dinner table for half an hour, never more than that, less if we could do it. And there were 4 questions that we had to answer. And so each person got to do question 1 and question 2 and so on. And then what we would do is just put a couple of things into the calendar where we needed silence. So at the time, I was doing a couple of acting gigs where things were being recorded. So I'd be like, look, all right, 4 till 6 on Friday. Like, do you guys mind, like, if you're in the front room, I'll be at the other end of the flat, and like, no, like, washing machine during that time or whatever, because, we need like perfect practice. And not only did my housemates like totally agree to that, but we all had our own version of that, where like somebody at some point in the week was like, can this be the quiet time? Because it was a 2-bed flat, like it wasn't a house, all on one floor. And so that worked really, really well. But then as COVID went on, I got more and more chilled about it. I get more like chilled about it now because it's just real life. And I think where I've been able to get more chilled about it is because other people are more chilled. People aren't going, oh, he's not very professional because I can hear his kids in the background, because we've all got kids or animals or, noisy neighbours or something in the background that's kind of disturbing it. And I think that level of vulnerability, just those little snapshots, is something that just, it warms people to you or me or others.
Yeah, it's definitely a different culture now, but
Yeah.
Don't really have a choice on this end. Don't have a choice. Between the dogs and the kids, it's just a noisy environment.
How old
Not
are
much
the
you
kids?
can do about it. Well, it's only one here at the minute. She's 7, so she'll be running around tormenting the dogs. So that's what will be happening. So there'll be barking, there'll be all sorts going on. It's just the way it is in this place. But I'm used to it. It probably won't be in the final recording, to be honest, because this automatically takes the background noise out at the end. But what can you do?
And I've shown you up now. But
it's fine.
I think it's great. I think that's my point. I think it's okay to show that level of vulnerability, and we both told stories about like struggles and good things and bad things in our lives, and people want to. My marketing team have told me now that like the thing with social media is like doing like just handheld videos where you're just like saying, oh, this just happened to me, and like not planning it and scripting it and then pretending, oh, this just happened to me, but like just really just sort of saying, because people have kind of gotten apathetic, bored of just the preened perfect social media presence, and it's actually just like people want to hear real conversations. And so, like, the fact that, I don't know if listeners know this, but the fact that this podcast is just a genuine chat, there's no pre-planned questions or organized things. I think that it's overwhelming. Like, what people want to see, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think there's so much out there now that's just overproduced and fake ultimately, and people feel a bit cheated by it, I think, a little bit. I do when I watch stuff. Like some of it's still obviously appealing, still drags you in, but too much of it just makes you just think like, oh, just enough.
Yeah.
So that real element does really help me, and helps me kind of buy into that. Oh, that person's a human. They're not like, haven't got this huge team behind them producing this massive fake show that I can't relate to.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it is important. I'm very, very conscious at the time because I know you got other commitments, Mike. So I'm gonna wrap it up here. Unless there's anything else you'd like to add.
No, not at all. It's just, it's been really, really nice to have a chat with you, and hopefully there's been some sort of nuggets. I would say, like, if people want more of those nuggets, check out my LinkedIn, because we're trying to give loads of just free content. Like, we're trying sorry.
Is that the best place for people to find you? Your LinkedIn? What about your website as well? Is that?
Yeah, so please come to the website. But of course, you come to the website, it's the formal stuff that you've got to pay for. So forefront-coaching.com or forefront-coaching.com. Come into Mike Lane Evans' LinkedIn page. There's the last few weeks there has been, and there's a lot more to come, of videos and blogs and like just content that we're not asking for anything back, but actually we just want to make. That's why we're doing podcasts, to be honest, is just to kind of say, actually, if we really believe what we're saying, which is we want our tools and tips to be accessible for everybody, then we can go and put some of it out there for free. So if anything has been useful today for people and you want to find a little bit more, just even if you watch the LinkedIn page and never connect or follow with it, it's there. It's there for you. So yeah, please feel free to use it.
No problem. I'll try and check the links in the show notes afterwards as well for people so they can access it that way. I'll just hit you with one quick question before I go. So I've asked this in every podcast, so I want to keep it going for a little while at least. If there was one piece of advice you could go and give your younger self, what would it be?
I think it would be, well, there's sort of two things that come into my head right now. One is change is okay, and the other is it's okay to not be okay. I stayed acting for longer than I actually wanted to because it was who I was. Like, I was sort of I put myself in a lane, thought I had to stay in that lane. And then, trying to take myself through that change, through that fear, I wasn't okay for a while. Like, it was shit and scary. And like, I took a step forward and 3 steps back like quite a lot of times. So I actually have a Post-it note. I have a little wall of Post-it notes of things that have come, like, have helped me throughout the time. And one of them is, it's okay to not be okay.
I like that. That's a good way to end it. So I really appreciate your time, Mike. Thanks for coming on, and hopefully we'll have you on again in the future.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. It's been really nice.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thank you. Take care.